Hi everyone, I'm a little early. I just want to test the equipment. It looks as though I may not have, oh no, I do have sound. I just want to double check. Hi everyone, I'm a little early. I just want to test the equipment. So let's see if I can type in the chat. If you're already here, be sure to say hi in the chat so I know that at least someone can hear me and see me. I can see my chat went in. You can see me moving things around. I want to get my computer equipment out of the way there. Let's see if that works. And I will cut all this beginning out of the excuse me, out of YouTube. Once it's up and running, it looks like no matter how I move my, right. Oh, there we go. To get all the technical difficulties out of the way. So while you're waiting, just make sure you have two fabrics. I have two different fabrics here. And I'm checking to make sure that you can see everything okay. I will bring my sewing machine in a little closer when I'm using it, because my table like ends right here, so I don't want it to fall off the table. So again, I have two fabrics. I have some 10-inch square layer cakes, so I'm just using these as our practice, and we're going to start on the real thing next week. So next Thursday, which is, let's see, today is the 10th, so it would be the 17th. I'm going to get my iron going. Bring over my little pincushion sewing kit. We are going to be working on the builder block, and today we're going to work on this one at the bottom, so it's on page 5 of your builder block. It's the shoe fly, and we're going to work on the 6-inch one. Just for a little more practice. We did a little practice last week, so if you missed that one, you can go back to a week ago. So what would that be, the 3rd, September 3rd, and you can see that one there. If you're using another type of cutting system like the Accuquilt cutter, I'm sure that your shoe fly block is in if you have one of the cubes. But you can do any block that just has some fairly simple half square triangles and squares, and work with that. So I know we're quite a bit early, so we really do have to wait until 7 o'clock. But again, if you want to go ahead and get your fabric ready, get your book out, get your plates ready, all that. I'm going to go through it all again once we start. And I can see my light pole is in your way. There we go. And hopefully the lighting is better than last time. I'm not quite sure what the problem was, because I had the same light, but maybe it was just me. It just seemed like it was dark. I did use a different program to do the live streaming with, and maybe that was it. I'm not sure. Well, if you're joining me now, we're not actually going to start the class until 7 o'clock. I just like to go on early so that I make sure that the equipment is working and the sound is working and you can see everything. It just gives you a chance to get settled in. If you're sewing along, make sure you have your sewing machine nearby. Hi, Christine. And are you sewing along, Christine? Have your sewing machine nearby, your cutter nearby. I got my plates and everything here that I'll go over in a little bit. Probably a pair of scissors wouldn't hurt. Your book, your fabric, some pins, that sort of thing. Stand my pins all the way through. So it'll be a bit silent for now. And as I was saying before, I will pause at 7:05, somewhere right around there. And I will do a pause and not speak so that I can tell when I go in to edit the video, I can cut it off right at that point, and you won't have to go, fast forwarding through this area where I'm just talking to myself. I will say that I can't edit it until after YouTube puts it up. What do they call it? Loads it up onto the internet. You can see it live now, but it takes a little while afterwards for it to load up to see again and again. And so I can't edit it until probably tomorrow morning. But you can always fast forward through it. Oh, excuse me, I knew a sneeze was coming. So I see Christine's all signed in. I'm waiting to hear. Christine, are you going to cut along and sew along? I think Lynn is. I may have to take my glasses off to see. Isn't that true? I'll take my glasses off to see up close. Screaming doesn't help. Okay, let's see what Christine had. I had to go get my socks. My feet were cold because I had to put the air on. You're not supposed to cut anything out yet, Christine. We're going to cut it out together. So don't worry about it. Just do your cutting. Don't worry about your sewing. Just grab some scrap fabric. Doesn't matter. You got to take the plunge sometime. Trying to keep my face out of the, I can't sit still on my chair. Oh, goody. So, Christine, you're gonna just do some cutting, doesn't matter. Just get some scrap fabric. So if anybody's going to use just scrap fabric, because this is just a little practice. Hi, Rhonda. This is just going to be a little practice. So just get your scrap fabrics out. Just make sure they're ironed, because it's not good to try to cut something that's all wrinkly. It'll cut, but it'll be wrinkly. I'm trying to find behind me. So this is what we're going to start working on next week. Now, while I'm waiting for a class to start, let me get my hands in the way again, my elbows and everything else. Let me move this out of the way. So should you have a Accuquilt cutter, so there's a go big and all that, and you've got a cube, one of the, like the 6-inch cube, 8-inch cube, you can use that and just pick blocks that cube makes. In this one, I'm using 6-inch blocks. So whatever 6-inch blocks your cube makes. If you have a 8-inch cube, make 8-inch blocks. If you're not sure what you want to do, just use up some scraps. It's just to get you to use your equipment. I guess I better turn my light on. Okay. I had to make sure I was on. Oh, and this really, for those, this doesn't really, that's not an attachment. It's just, it's where I keep it out of my own way. Rhonda, are you going to be cutting today or tonight? So if you're not cutting, that's fine. You can just watch. If you're doing your own sewing and watch us at the same time, that's fine. Need a place to hang out on Thursday night? That's okay too. So anybody, I'm in New Hampshire. I know some of you in New Hampshire, Massachusetts. I have some people in Florida, but for those of us in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, it may only be 73 out, but it is muggy. I don't know. Do people around the whole country use the word muggy? Muggy is like it's probably damper than when it rains, because it's been raining all day, and that takes the mugginess away. But the mugginess is like if you're outside and it's not raining, but it's really muggy, your shirt will feel like it's wet anyway. Damp. So the air is very, very heavy, because it's heavy with the moisture of the mugginess. That sounded really like a good weather report right there. So does anybody have any questions about anything before we start? Because we still have about 8, 9, 10 minutes left. Oh, did somebody do a thumbs up? I think I can see that. Oh, hi, Lynn. Lynn's cutting tonight. Because I said she was, that's why. So mark on your calendar every Thursday night, unless something should come up in life, which, sometimes that happens, but every Thursday night at 7, we'll be here together. Uh-oh, I see Lynn in the chat says don't. Don't know, don't. But we can all guess. What is she saying don't to? Don't mind me. It starts with an M. Come on, let's see if we can guess what she's saying. Oh, your fingers. Are you having bad fingers today? Or did you mean you're typing? Because you don't want to get the fingers don't need to be in here. Because nothing happens anyway, but I wouldn't stick my fingers in there to find out. Lynn, is the lighting better tonight? Lynn, you didn't know what you were Downton? Is that a word? Downton? Sounds like Downton Abbey. For anyone that was in my class, was it my class? No, in the meeting the other day, I found my nut, and I got the fan all back together. It's all clean and back together. I was worried there for a while. It didn't look good. Oh, good. Thanks, Lynn. And some of you I will see tomorrow afternoon. Some of you I will see Monday. And we have I can tell you if I could know what I did with it. So I did the pot holder for Saturday's live, YouTube live. I posted it on my Facebook page, Miss LoreensSchoolhouse. And what did I? Okay, I have it all done. It's made out of bird fabric. All right, let me look around while we're waiting. I was looking for that. There's our block from last time. All right, now that doesn't seem fair. I can find the two pot holders from last week, and I can't find Saturday's pot holder. That just doesn't seem right. Oh, right in front of my eyes the whole time. Just a reminder for Saturday. I usually have the class or the live class at 1, and I have to do it at 1:30 because I have to work on Saturday. So once a month on the Saturday will be at 1:30, but I posted the time on Facebook. I did a reminder. We only have a couple minutes to go. Is everybody excited to use their machines? Lynn, I know you have a Gemini. I know Christine has a Accuquilt cutter, and I think she has the 8-inch cube. So I gave that a little press. That was our last week's project. So here's the pot holder for Saturday, and we're going to quilt it right in class. You see the quilting there? We're going to quilt it right in class. We're going to make the whole thing start to finish Saturday. So just remember, it's 130, not 1. And I'm going to place this somewhere where I know I can find it. So this was the block we did last week. And it is in the builder block. It's a star block. In the builder block, it is on page 6, right there at the top, see? So if you missed last week and you want a little more practice, go ahead and do that one. And I'm just going to set that. Let's see how long that stays up there. Hi, Jen, you made it. Good for you. I tried to get in you see more of that junk than I do. I tried to get everything in a good place where you could see everything at the same time. I will move my machine a little closer because I know last week we talked about the 1/4-inch seam, and I'd show you how I do mine. So it's almost 7. So I'm just going to be quiet for about 2 minutes. You girls can chat in the chat all you want. Christine, are you asking about this book? If you're asking about this book, I'm working on the Gemini. So this book came with the builder block system. If you look in your cube, Christine, if you look in your cube, every die has a block that you can make. So if you want to just use those, you're good with that. Okay, so I'm going to go, I will start at 7:01, my time. I don't mean just Eastern Standard Time, I meant whatever's on my watch time. Okay, 7:01 my time. So we are working with, good evening, everyone. Glad to see the people have joined. Don't forget you can chat in the little chat section. I'll watch it so that if you have any questions, you can also chat among yourselves as long as you know you're paying attention a little bit to class. So I'm going to be using the Gemini. I got the Gemini Junior out because I know I'm just making a 6-inch block and I don't need the big plates out. So I'm going to be working from the build the block system, and I'm going to be working on, this is the very first page of block, so it's page 5, and I'm trying to keep the glare down. There we go. So we're going to be working on the shoe fly block, and I'm going to make mine 6 inches. Okay, I have 2 fabrics to work with because it's just 2 colors. You could make it more colors, but in this case, we're going to keep it simple. I have sewing thread in my machine. The needle I use is a Microtech 80. Regular sewing thread in the bobbin. your default stitch length for your machine. Mine is, I have a baby lock, so baby lock and brother would be the same. And mine is, let me turn it so maybe you can see. I'm not sure if you can see that far. Let's see what happens when we zoom in. Yeah, I was afraid it would be down lower. Okay, so I'm at 2.5 stitch length is my default. So if you want to go ahead and get your machine ready, or get your machine already set up for sewing. If you're not sewing tonight and you're just going to be cutting, that's fine. We don't mind, whatever makes you happy. Make sure you have some pins on hand, pair of scissors. I have my little cutting mat. Behind me I have my iron, and I have a little, this isn't what I usually use, but I was going to show you how I press tonight. So I have a little baby pressing mat that's almost the size of my iron. So we'll see how that works. And we also need, and I have to get mine because I don't press at every step in the block. I don't press with the iron until a block is finished. So I'm going to get my little wooden roller. Okay, that was a long pause, wasn't it? Because my wooden roller isn't where it's supposed to be. And you know who used it last? That was me the other day in class. So I've got a couple different wooden irons here. Just stick those up there out of the way. Okay, sorry for that little pause. It isn't in its normal place. Okay, and I'm glad, Jen, that your husband's enjoying my little show. He can tip anytime. Don't forget to give me a tip. Just kidding. Okay, so for the Gemini, we're going to need our plates. And I'll try to do this with as little glare as possible. So I have one cutting plate that looks pretty nice. I have one cutting plate, clear plate, that doesn't look so nice. So that guy's going to be on the bottom all the time because I cut down, I don't cut up, and I'll show you why. You're going to need your metal plate and your plastic shim. And yours might look like mine, looks a little, and you see it's got a little, look at there. Now you can see got a little bow to it. But that's okay. So when I start out with the Gemini name in the bottom right corner of everything. Both sides, and you can turn it this way, that way, to get the most use out of it. The same with this one. Okay. So let's make sure we have our plates out, and I'm gonna stick mine right back there for now. So make sure you have those are the plates you need for fabric cutting. Make sure your machine is on. And if we look at our instructions, we're doing the 6-inch block, and if you look at it, I'm gonna do it without this glare if I can. It's just either half square triangles or squares. So there's only 2 dies that we're using. So if we look at the instructions, it says we're going to cut 5 2.5-inch squares, and we're going to cut 8 2.5-inch half squares. So I'm going to get my square dies out. So here's my square dies. So right on the front has all the measurements. We want 2.5. We'll double check 2.5-inch square. So if I go up this little edge, the 1, 2, third one from the center says 2.5. So I'm going to go. Oh, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 from the center. 1, 2, 3 from the center. That's the one I need. And I'm going to set this aside. Then I need my half square triangle. So make sure it says half square triangle, not quarter square triangle. That's different. So they both will say square triangle. You just have to make sure you read the one that says half square triangle. Okay? So if we look at our instructions again, we need the 2.5-inch half square triangle. And again, we can look at our little sheet of sizes. And if I come down to the bottom right, the middle one is the 2.5 or 2.5-inch half square triangle. So I try to keep this the same way so I don't confuse myself. So I need the middle one. Probably help if you have fingernails, I guess, or maybe it's worse, I don't know. So I took the middle one out. So now I have my 2 pieces that I need. I'm going to set this aside. Okay, so I'm going to just put my book up like that for a minute so you can see where I am. So I've got my square, 2.5-inch square, my 2.5-inch half square. See, half square. And you notice when we put this over that this isn't on the halfway. That would be correct because we need to sew on the halfway. So this is moved over 1/4 of an inch from where we need to sew. Alrighty? So then you got to decide which fabric is which. So I'm going to use this yellow one. Let's set that there for a minute. I'm going to use this yellow one as my background, which I would call the white on this picture. And I'm going to use this gray flowers is going to be where the dark is. So let's do the dark one first. I'm going to set this aside for a minute. And I have more than one of those, so we're just going to take one for now. And I made sure I didn't have directional fabric. You don't want to start out when you're first learning to cut and so forth with a directional fabric. Just make it easier on yourself. So my gray is going to be my dark color in the picture. So I can see I only need 1 square of my print, because it's just this middle fella. You can see that okay? Okay. I'm afraid if I move it, it'll tip over. There we go. Oh, yeah, see, I should have left well enough alone. Okay. So the dark square is the dark is going to be this print fabric. Okay. So I need 1 square and I need 4 half squares. So I find it easier to cut 1 fabric at a time. Can the Gemini go through a lot more fabric? Sure it can. But I want to keep it simple as while we're starting out. And if I cut everything at once, the show will be over. The whole class will be over. So we're just going to work with 1 fabric at a time. So I know that I need 4 half square triangles. But I don't really need 4 squares. So how will I do this? Well, let me see if I just fold this in half. So I have a 10-inch square. So I just folded it in half, and then I'm going to fold it in half again. And when I fold it again, okay, I have all my raw edges are together. You see that? And I have my folds all on the same side. So when I folded this, let me back up because I think I went forward, but I didn't back up. There we go. So when I folded this, and it doesn't matter if you fold it right sides together, wrong sides together. For this particular thing, it doesn't matter. But I like to look at the pretty side. So I just fold it in half. And then here's my folded edge here, my raw edges here and here. And I just folded this down. And the reason I do that is because I want all my raw edges together. So that if I have my half square triangle over here, see where I am over here, this whole piece of fabric with the fold stays one big piece of fabric for me to use over and over until I run out of fabric. If I went over here and did it, then all I'm going to have is a bunch of pieces left. Does that make sense? Okay, so we just put those up like that. I want you to open up your fabric. Now you could be working from just scrap pieces, but what you want to make sure of on this one, especially with this long edge, well, let's look in the book and see. I believe it's going to tell you, and I think it'll be at the beginning, because we need to. So right here so here's the hardcover, right here, cutting tips. Square, line your die up with the grain of the fabric, okay? Half square, ensure the right angle of the triangle is on the straight of grain. And it has a little picture here. And you see I had mine wrong. So you can see the little pictures. So here's the straight of grain, and it's taking this side of the triangle to be on the straight of grain. So let's hold that page for a minute so that you can refer to it. So straight of grain would be if you had the salvage of or the edge of your fabric, following the salvage is the straight of grain. But a lot of the times we don't have anything that tells us. So you can tell by when you pull on it. One way you'll have no give to it, and the other way will have a little give. Can you see how that kind of bows in a little bit? And you see how this one doesn't move at all. So this is the straight of grain, okay? So I'm going to take for a moment, don't use a pin because you'll forget about it, but I'm just going to put a little clip right on that edge, so I know there's the straight of grain. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and clip on the side that you have the straight of grain. The reason I don't want you to use a pin is because I don't want you to forget you have a pin in it and run it through any of your cutters. Okay, so now when I fold, I'm going to be folding and keeping that in mind where that clip is. And I got to move it down now because when I go to fold, it'll be in the way. Okay, so I know here's my straight of grain right here. So I know I have to have this half square triangle, this right angle along that straight of grain. Okay, so I'll give everybody a minute to do that. And I'm going to run it down. Let's see if I can come in a little. I'm not sure if I come in a little more. Yeah, have to back up here. So I want to make sure that I'm down near the edges. Remember, this is my raw edge. Fold is up here, fold is over here. Okay, so I'm cutting out at the very edges of my fabric, which leaves this whole section as one big piece. Okay? So let's just run this one through by itself. Because right now, we don't have room enough for this guy. And when you put your die down, make sure that the ridge is face down and the smooth side is face up, because the ridge is actually think of it as the knife. It's not sharp to you. It's sharp when it gets compressed. Okay. So I'm going to get my plates. I'm going to set this aside for a minute so you have more room to see. So I'm going to get my plates ready. And I believe in the instructions of your plates. It has you cutting up. And I'll show you why I don't cut up, because it's easier to show you. So I'm going to put down my plate that, see all the marks on it? That's the plate I want down, because I'm going to keep this one as nice as I can for as long as I can, and then it can replace this bottom one at some point. So I have my cutting plate down, and that's the one I'm cutting into. And I'm going to put down my metal plate. And remember, I've got my Gemini name over here. So Jennifer wants to know what happens if you don't place it according to the straight of grain. Is the piece, is it ruined? It's not necessarily ruined. And this is true of any cutter, the Accuquilt or any of them. There's so much pressure on that when it goes through any of these machines that you don't want it to stretch. So if you cut it wrong, can you try it and see if it's all right? I would. But you just want to be aware of it. If you're doing an applique, it doesn't matter. Okay. The thing is you don't want to have it like this on this angle. Let me show you with the square, because it's easier to show you with the square. So here's my straight of grain where the pin is. Where the clip is. So let me face it towards you this way. So there's my straight of grain. If I turn this like this to try to get into a corner, now I'm on the bias. When you're on the bias of fabric, it has a lot of stretch to it. So when you go to sew two pieces together, especially if this piece is on the bottom, it's going to stretch out of shape enough that it's going to throw your block off. Okay? And this is true whether you're cutting with a rotary cutter and ruler. You always want to make sure you're on straight of grain. Okay? So if I was cutting according to the instructions, I would be laying my die down, then my fabric cutting up into it. Well, I can't see where my die is anymore. So that's why I cut down. So I'm going to put my metal plate on. I'm going to put my fabric on. Now, when I put my fabric on, I can tilt it. I'm not sure can you see how it's tilted just a little bit? But let's try, just because these are really pretty simple dies. Let's try. This guy can't stay anywhere because he's all bowed. Let's try to stay as straight as possible. So I'm going to lay my fabric down, and I can lay it down anywhere along here. I still have my clip there, just so I don't forget what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm going to go ahead and put my die down in that corner. Let me see if I can lift this up. There you go. So you see how this guy is over. I'm not over here in the middle, because then I'm wasting all this. I don't want to come to the very edge, because I didn't exactly line up every piece when I folded it. So I'm just going to come in a little bit. Okay. Now you can, especially when your plates start to get a little warpy, you can take a little bit of low-tack tape and just tape it in place. Okay? Now, do you see when I put that over in that corner? Oh, I think I need to come in. I'm going to come in just a little bit more, because I can see the fabric underneath. is not quite lined up with that top fabric. So I really do have, oh, that's good. Almost dropped them on the floor. I really do have room for this block to be there. So I think I'm going to go ahead and put that block right on there, that die right on there. And again, I'm going to tape it because I'm close to this other one, but I don't want it to jump and have one die hit over the other because it would probably break with all the pressure going through the Gemini cutter or any cutter. So I'm just going to tape that in place. And I can use that tape over and over and over. But you see, when your plates start to get all bent and stuff, things don't, excuse me, things don't want to sit nice and pretty. So I'm going to wait just a minute to see, to have all of you catch up. And see, this one, I taped it right to the plate, so it won't slide around the plate. Since this is a 2.5-inch square, if I only wanted one of them, I would wait and cut it separate. But why not put them all together, shall we? And then you can just take it, especially when we go ahead and start working on a project, you might use the extra pieces in another block. So I'm hoping that all of you are ready now. So the next thing that goes on is our plastic shim. And you can see, I'm not sure if you can see just how bold mine is. There you can see. See this? And I honest to God can never remember if this way flattens it better or if this way flattens it better. I think I told you that last week too. I'll probably tell it to you next week. And then my nice clean plate is on top, and I have all the names in the same spot. Okay? Well, I'm sitting out of the way, so I'm going to have to stand up. Hopefully I won't be too much of your way. Let me get that distraction out of the way. My machine is on, but see what happens when I have a bunch of stuff and I squeeze it? I'm squeezing down the other end. I can't get that in my machine. So I need to hold it up this end and just squeeze it so it gets, everybody gets inside, because once it's in there, it'll go through just fine. It'll make crackling noises and it'll slow down. But if it's too much for it, it will stop and come back. And with the Gemini, it shuts off when you're done. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set my plates aside in the order or in the way I'm going to use them again. And what I mean by that is my Gemini name is down here. I'm just going to flip it up and then flip it around so that my Gemini is over here and it's the back side. And I'm going to do the same with this one. And in this case, let's see, I'm going to go this way and then this way. So the name is over there. And now I'm bowed in the other direction. And normally you'd have a little more space than I have here. Okay, so now we're down to our metal plate and our other plate, our other clear plate, cutting plate. So I'm going to lift up my die, and well, it's probably easier to take. I was going to lift it up and take the tape at the same time, but I think it's easier just to take the tape off. And I'm just going to stick the tape there and lift up my die. And I have my 4 pieces. Okay, so I'm just going to set those aside for now. I'm going to take my other tape take that tape off, and I can use it again. And I have my 4 squares, but I only need one of them. So I'm just going to take one and set it here, and I'm just going to set the other ones aside. Now, when I open this, because I used the square, so I did take out a big chunk. But if I open this up, let's see how much if I have anything left in the middle. So I don't have a whole lot left, but I will keep this section here. So I'm going to just take my scissors and I'm just I'm going to save this. I don't know if this one will work here, but I'll save it for either applique or something smaller I'm doing. So I would put these like in a little baggie. So I'm just going to set it up there for now. And I go ahead and trim them right while I'm right here working on it because it's just easier. And let's see what I have left. I have a little piece here. So go ahead and trim yours up. There's a lot of times when you have a little block or you have a little applique and you don't want to cut into a big piece, and you got all these little pieces that'll work just fine. So I just have these little bits left over, and I'm just going to throw those away. I'm going to take the pieces that are left over and I'm just going to set them aside. Now, before I forget, I didn't turn these as I did the first two. So remember the Gemini's there. I'm going to flip it up and over. Okay? So the Gemini's underneath, it's not here. And then the same with this one. I'm going to flip it up and then turn it over. And I'm going to set this down. Then I'm going to set this one down because this is the order I do them in. And this one, and this one. And I'm just going to set them aside. Oh, well, no, we're going to use them again, but I would just go ahead and set them aside. I find that if I turn these after I'm done cutting, it works out better for me because if I wait and turn them when I'm cutting, then I forget. So I'm going to set these aside. Okay? And you don't have to be on a cutting mat. Mine just happens to be here. Okay, so now if we look at our book, back to our page. Did everybody cut okay their first part? Did it make a lot of snaps and crackles and pops? So now we're going to do the background color. So for me, that's this one. And normally I wouldn't do this bright with this one. My background would normally be like a white or off-white. I just thought that we could see the differences better on the screen. So we're going to look here, and we have our 1 square, and then our 4 half squares of our print fabric. Christine, you cut, good for you. Good job. And now we're going to do the background fabric, or the white. I call that the background. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4 squares and 1, 2, 3, 4 half square triangles. So we're going to cut it exactly as we did the other one. Only this time we do need all 4 of them. Okay? So I'm going to take all the plates and set them aside. I'm just going to put these pieces up here because I don't have that many places to put it. Let me see if anybody has any questions. Oh, Lynn, you cut too? Good for you. Okay, everybody have a drink of water or whatever you're drinking tonight. There's a little congratulations sip And you can take a deep breath and go, oh, God, I made it through that. So we're going to do the exact same thing again. Okay? So the first thing we have to do is find our straight of grain. So you can see, can you see how can you see the not wrinkles, what would you call them? They're like little, like that. See them? And then when I go this way, it's nothing. It's absolutely flat. And you can hear the difference. This one has a higher pitch than this one does. So my straight of grain is here. So I'm going to put my clip there. Let me get a nice bright red one here. There's my straight of grain. Now this time, without meaning to, I have directional fabric. So here's my rule on directional fabric in a block. You either have to have it all going the same way, or you have to have it going whatever way it's going. You can't have it 4 the same way and 1 not. You could have 2 the same way and 2 the other way, but I generally just try not to pay any attention to it at all. And let it, because when someone looks at your quilt or they look at your table runner or whatever you're making, not everybody's looking at it from the same angle. So it would only catch your eye if all of these were going in one direction and then one poor guy was going in the other direction. And again, probably the only people that would notice is other quilters, and they should know better than to say anything because it could happen to them. So, did you find your straight of grain on your second fabric and put your little clip on? Oh, here's mine. Put your little clip on. Let me do it this way. So you can see how my fabric is directional? It's words going this way. So let's just let her rip and see what we get. Okay? So I'm going to, put your clip back. Okay? So, because I like the pretty side out, I'm going to fold this wrong sides together. So I still got my straight of grain there. Then this, oh, it looks like, did you lose me for a minute? Let me just pause because I got a 1, 2, 3 came up on my screen. Let me just pause for a second and make sure it catches up okay. Okay, so I don't know if you got the lapse. It only lasted like for a second. But just in case, I want to put a little pause there. Okay, so we're folding our fabric, keeping our straight of grain, keeping an eye on our straight of grain. So now, folded edges here. I'm just going to bring this down. And I'm going to make sure I took my clip out, but I want to put it right back in again. Because don't hold it in your hand and then think you're going to get it right. Ask me how I know that. Okay, so I don't have to line up perfect, but I don't want to be like a 1/2 inch off anywhere. So fold, fold. Okay. And there's my little, I'm going to put my straight of grain up, flip up out of the way because I know I'm going to put my 1/2 square triangle down here. So my 1/2 square triangle, remember my straight of grain is going along this side, and here's the long edge. I'm going to have it right there. Or am I going to have it right there? So if I'm here, this is on the bias, and generally when you cut a square and you cut it kitty corner. If you cut this corner to corner this way, this would be bias. But when you sew it to another one, the bias is under control. What the point of having the bias in here is so this outside edge is not biased and it's not stretchy. Okay, I think last week I might have had this long edge on our straight of grain, so we'll have to go back. I'll have to go back and see that now that I think about it. So if I was to cut this like I normally would with a rotary cutter and ruler, and I cut this in half to sew it to one this color, this center on this angle is biased. So when I sew the piece of this one to this one, the two half squares together, I don't want to be pulling with my hands and fidgeting around with the fabric much. But once I have it sewn, that bias is now locked down. But these outside edges, which may be the edge of your quilt, of your block, and you're going to handle it a lot, they're on the straight of grain so that they aren't going to pull and get out of shape as much as if this was on the outside edge. Does that make sense? So whether I have it this way, here's my bias, because that's my straight of grain. So what is that, 45 degree? This angle is biased. If you took your fabric, let me see if I can do it with this piece without wrecking my other fabric. Hold on. So this is straight of grain this way. So if I go on this angle, you see how that angle is. If I go on this angle of this one, I can really, if you feel it, your fabric, when you find your straight of grain and then your cross grain, which your straight of grain and then cross grain, they have the least stretch. If you go between the two on the angle, you'll feel that stretch. So you can really see it. So I can really stretch it. So you want to control that stretch. Okay, so I can put, if I turn this way, I don't have a place for my square, though I could. We can do this. We can move this one up here. And we can put our squares down here. So because whether you have this one on the straight of grain or this one on the straight of grain, this is going to be biased either way. Does that make sense? And you wondered why you took all that math in school. Okay, so I wanted to show you that before we put it on the plates. So I'm going to get my plates ready. Remember, this is Mr. Scratchy. And then I've got them in that same order when I turned them around. And it appears like, I don't know if you can see it when I put it down, but I'm doing a lot of cutting in the same exact places. I don't know how that worked out, but this one is the tin man. He's kind of crinkly all over, but I'm going to put him down. Then I'm going to put my fabric down. I haven't taken my clip off yet. I want to get this little guy right here taped down. And this time I'm just going to angle it just a little bit. You can see my top angle here. So that when it goes in the machine, this whole piece isn't going, this whole die isn't going. And we'll just see if that gives us just a little bit of less noise. But the noise isn't going to hurt anything. So I'm going to take this one down. And I'm taping it right to the tin man. And then I now have my square. I don't want to get too close, so let me tape them and show you. Because you're not saving anything by being a 1/16 of an inch closer. So let me hold it up because I've got them both taped down. So I've got a good 1/4 inch there. And I'll fix this. Now I don't want this to go through this way. I want this to be nice and straight with the fabric so that I have a straighter grain. If I went through this way, now these edges are all going to be a little bit biased, and we don't want that. We have enough trouble sewing straight and getting everything right as it is. Okay, so I'm going to give you a minute to get your plates ready and your fabric ready. I'm going to make sure I take off this clip. And I could move this down so I'm not cutting in the same place all the time. So I just have to untape this fella here, right here. And I'm just going to move it down. You don't need to cut in the exact same place every time. Of course, it would help if you take it back on and you were on the tin man. There we go. Okay, so I don't have to always be up there. That's not necessary. Okay, so everybody's taped down. So next goes our poor, I guess this is the plastic shim it's called, this poor thing. And yeah, mine almost looks like I could have a banana split in it. And you see what it's going to do. You see how it's going to be wide apart there. But that's okay. It'll all work out, I hope. And then I'm putting this pretty on the top. So I've got my sandwich. And I don't want to hold it back here because it's going to make this part open up even further. So I'm just squishing it down. Get it going. And my light's still on. Look. It popped and cracked about the same. But I think, well, look, can you see it now? That's pretty funny. So it did help out that curve a little bit. So now I know I've got to come like this way this time. Can you see it? It looks like a ski slope, ski jump. I'm not sure if you can see it. This right here is like a hill. Okay, so we're going to remember, this time I'm just going to turn my plate and I'm going to have it, the name up there. And I'm going to turn this one, which way were we? This way. I'm going to turn this one and have the name up there. And I'm going to set those aside. And here we are to our cutting. Did everybody cut okay? Did you get used to that little popping noise? Now, I can feel that I have a thread. I'm not sure if you can see. There's one little thread right there, a little thread of fabric. If I pull that, I'm going to put a run, like in the old days of nylons, pantyhose, nylons. I don't want to put a run in my fabric. So I'm just going to clip that. Don't be lazy and yank it across. And I've got a little one here. Okay. So there's my 4 half square triangles. I'm going to put them right up with my other ones. I'm going to take the tape off of the squares. Now I know this time I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to that, where that fold was, because I wanted you to leave your, see that you could leave your half square triangle in the same direction. And then now this time I need all 4 of these. So I'm going to put those there. And now if I look, let's see what I got this time. So look, I got a nice big piece in the center. So that actually worked out, I think, a little better than the first one, because that big piece in the center, if I had needed 1 square, I can get a square out of that. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this up. And I'm going to put that over in my little pile. And for now, I'll keep this little piece. You know, at some point you'll say, yeah, I got enough of these. But for now, because I do have some applique to do at some point, and I may need that. If any of you have an embroidery machine and you do applique in the hoop, these are perfect for that kind of stuff. So you can make yourself, get a little box and call it applique pieces. And see, I just have this little bit left over. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and flip this one up and flip this one up. And I'm done cutting, but I'm going to put them all back together this way. And I just put them in my little area there, so they're ready to go. So let's just take a minute and see, did everybody get both of their colors cut? So while I'm putting away my little sections, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. I noticed all of these, oh no, I was going to say, it looks like all of them were, I can't tell if they're supposed to be face up or face down. I can't tell. I'm not sure it matters. Any questions? Jen, did you get all cut? Did your husband stay and do the cutting for you? Christine, how you doing? Oh, Jennifer, you like the organizer? When I got mine, it came with it, but you can get them separate, and it fits, the same one fits the junior and the regular one. It has, I don't think you can see it, but attached to this is a piece that comes out flat out here. And it has 2 holes in it, so the legs of this go into that piece, so it all stays together. And you can see, or you probably can see better than I can now. And here's even has a tape dispenser built in for your low-tack tape. Now, you see how I have my tape like this? So I don't always leave it that way. Sometimes I just put it like up here. I leave it hanging a little bit so I know it's an extra piece. And I just kind of leave them up there. Because otherwise, sometimes they get into trouble. They become little troublemakers. Okay, let's see. Is anybody? Oh, yes, Jenna. Oh, you have the purple one of this? Yeah. This was a special one time black, and I like the black, and I got it on purpose, but if I put it with all the rest of the stuff, it's like the wicked stepchild. Okay, so you're done with your dies and you've set them all aside. So I'm going to go ahead and push this back a little ways and hopefully not tip over the light there. Okay, everybody do okay? All right, so now we're going to sew, and I'm going to move this over, and I'm going to remove this light. I put this light here, otherwise it gets dark back there on the camera. So let me do this. Let's see how. Now, I'm going to see if I can, and bear with me here because I'm gonna change the camera to go kind of that way. Oh, I gotta move that pole, don't I? I'm not sure I can sew in this direction. I'm gonna do this for now. Okay, so brother baby lot. Let me scroll up, see if anybody has any questions. Okay, so brother baby lot. You have your J foot, which has that little, see the little knob right there? Let me do it this way. Has a little knob right there. And it has a J on it. Every foot that comes with your machine has a letter on it, so the J is right in there. Pardon my arms now, because I am going to have to change it to sew. But so the first thing I want to do is I want to show you how I get my 1/4 inch. Oh, let's see. There we go. Okay. So I'm not going to use the 1/4 inch foot with the guide, and you can, that's fine. But I'm just going to show you how I do it. It seems I have the 1/4 inch foot with the guide, and this seems to work better for me. I don't know why. So whether it's, so this is the, what is this machine? Aventura. So whether you have the Aventura or the, they're all escaping me. Their names are escaping me. But you'll see they'll mostly look on this idea. So it's electronic with the screen. I want to say like $600 and up, I believe. So not every machine has pivot. I'm going to put my pivot on. So when I put my pivot on, that means I'm going to put my foot down, and when I sew and stop, my needle will go into the fabric and my foot will come up a little bit. So if I need to adjust or anything, and then I just have to hit my foot pedal and go on. So that particular thing isn't on all of them. I want to say it's on the, Christine, if you tell me what machine you have, it starts with your machine. The name escapes me right now, but it looks just like this. Okay, so what I want is, hopefully I'm not on my big machine, so it takes me a minute. But what I want to do is I'm going to scroll across here until I get to the stitches that have the P underneath. Can you see that P under there? So I got a bunch with the S, and that's for using the side cutter if you have one, but I want the ones with the P. And I want the one, P is for piecing. If you have some of the bigger machines, you'll have a tab over on this side over here, and it'll be on the quilting or the Q tab. Okay? No, Christine, I mean your smaller machine, not your Destiny, your smaller machine. The one that's like this, but it's sewing only. Anyways, if you see stitches with the P at the bottom, letter P, those are for piecing. But then for piecing when you have the J foot on, because most everything on all your machines work with the feet that came with your machine. So you'll see on one of the P stitches, the stitch is over to the right a little bit. And that's the stitch I want. And when I touch it, my needle came to the right. Watch. So watch, can you see if you can see my needle without me getting stabbed? We put something in there. Can you see the needle? All right, hold on. Oh, so see how it went back to the middle? So when I hit that P, you see how it moved to the right? So what that does is now I can use this edge of my J foot to get my 1/4 inch seam because the machine moved the needle this way, closer to the edge of my fabric. Does that make sense? Okay. And it also automatically changed it to a 2.0 stitch length. Because a lot of times when you're piecing, you may want to have a little bit tighter stitch, so the 2.0. If you don't like the 2.0, you can change it to 2.5. But that's how that works. Some of the adjustments in here are automatic for the job you're doing. Yes, Christine, I'm sorry, the soprano. The soprano. And I don't know what, there's a brother equivalent to it. So from the soprano up in price, in size of machine, they generally all have that pivot. But this piecing stitch, is on some of the machines that are on the lower price. And they look very similar to this. They're the same size, they just have less things to pick from. But I'm pretty sure that piecing stitch is there. Okay, so now you've had that little. Now let's see if I can turn this so I can still sew. Let me get some light here. So let me zoom in a little more. And I know the shadow of the machine comes down. Okay, so now I have to zoom back to show you the layout of our fabric, of our pieces. So let me zoom back out. So if you need to close your eyes, go ahead. It's okay. Okay. You can see my machine's practically hanging off. This is the edge of my table right here. I can't go any further than that. Okay, so let me back up a little more. Okay, so that's as far back as I can get with my camera, unless I back the camera up. So let me get over this way. There, can you see that okay? So let me move this out of the way. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we want to lay our block out the way we're going to sew it. So for those of you that are consider yourselves in the kind of expert sewing category, and you just needed to learn how to cut, you can go ahead and sew along at your own speed, faster if you want to. I'm going along with those that might need a little help. So we're going to look at our little picture, and we need to line up everything just as it is in the picture. So remember, this was my, let me see if I can, hold on a second. Well, if I bring my camera up higher, then you won't be able to see the stitching. So hopefully you can see that okay. Well, you know what? Hold on. There, you see it better without the gray? How's that? Okay. I'm trying to hold the book out at the same time for you. Okay, so this is my first piece. If you look at your little picture there. So I have one like that, and this is its mate. All right, we got to back up a little bit. Hold on. Feels that? Oh, look, I'll do it this way here. How's that? We'll go that way. No, I can't go that way because then I won't know how to pick it up right. Okay, so we'll be just right there. Can you see it right there? All right. Okay. Let me move this out of the way. There we go. How's that? Okay, so then we have, and remember this is my background, so then next to it is a square. And then next to that is another set half squares. So the outside corners are your background fabric or your non-focus fabric. Okay, and we have, we're going to go to the next row, and I'm just going to start with the middle because it just makes more sense to me. So these two are opposite colors. And remember, I paid no attention to my the lines of the writing of the on the fabric. And then this is the bottom row. And again, that background fabric, you can't see mine, but here, let's do it here. The background fabric is to the outside edge. Let's do this. So see how they're to the outside corners. Okay? So is everybody laid out like that? Let me see if there's any questions. Okay? So I'm going to see if I can move mine up a little bit so you can see it. Now, last week when we worked on this, we worked on one row at a time. So we sewed this piece to this one and then put it back. So I think maybe we'll do that for the moment today. But you'll notice that every one of these half square triangles is exactly the same. So it doesn't matter if I turn it this way, this way, this way. I can get it back to where it belongs. So let's make sure we sew all four of these at one time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my main fabric and I'm going to flip it up onto that background fabric, and I'm going to put a pin right in where I need to sew. Now, I might not be perfectly lined up, and that's okay, because I'm going to line up when I'm at the machine, but I need to know where I'm going to sew. So let's do that with each one. So we're going to take our main fabric, flip it up onto our background fabric, and put a pin in the side that we're going to sew. And it doesn't matter if I turn them around. See, I'm going to put them all right together. I'm going to set these aside. And I just got this last one. Okay, so I'm going to set the the squares aside for the moment. You just put them up there. And I've got my four pieces. And I can see on every one of them the side I'm going to sew on. Don't automatically think you're going to remember. Just put the pin in. Just trust me. Put the pin in. You'll be a happier person. Okay? So I'm going to just pick these guys up. And I'm going to put them up there so that now I can bring my machine in closer. You bring that light, if I can get it through there, closer. And let's see what happens when I zoom in. Ooh, how's that? Is that pretty good? Look, I can get really close. How's that? Is that close enough for you? Is it still nice and clear? Except for when I bump the camera with my foot? Can you see that good? Wish you could give me a thumbs up. Okay, so I gotta move it a little more because I want you to see this edge. God only knows if I'm gonna be sewing straight or not, so don't hold that against me. So I've got them all right here, right to my side, right here, right over here. So I'm just gonna pick up this first one, and I know where I have to sew, so I'm gonna aim it, I'm gonna hold it in the direction I'm gonna sew. So if you look at this little, let me get another pin. Do you see this little area right here? So what the die did is it cut off the point, or what they call the dog's ear. It cut that point out. Instead of coming out to a point like this is, it cut that, excuse me, cut that off. Because number one, it'll suck down into your machine. And number two, you won't know where to start. So if you look at this, you're going to start about where this point is. Like, well, yeah, let me point with the other side. Let me stab myself. There we go. So we're going to start sewing right here, down. And we're going to sew till we get to the other side of this. So you don't want to be to the outside, which is over here. You don't want to be to the outside of this corner. You want to be at the corner or just inside the corner, inside being towards the needle. And I'm going to straighten this out. I know it's crooked, so you don't have to yell at me. I already know. So once I put it to the machine, I'm going to straighten it. Okay, let me just check and see if there's a question. Okay, so get your pieces pinned and ready for the sewing.
I was just coming in the building, love. I do it right there. Thank you very much. Have a good day, love.
Thank you. Okay, sorry about that. If you heard that little, my neighbor brought I got a box from Moda today, and it just came. And I'd like to stop and look at it, but we can't. Okay, so is everybody all ready? So we're just gonna make sure, here's our needle. We know we're sewing on this side. I wanna see how that's not lined up. You can see the yellow through. So I'm gonna take my pin out because I'm gonna stay facing this way. And just line my two pieces up. Okay? Well, maybe I'm a little too close now. Hold on. Thanks for the thumbs up, Christine. Okay. So I'm going to turn the machine even more, which means I'm sitting like way over. Oh, I'm sitting like way over here. Over here. So I can't see the front of my machine. I have to look in the camera to see it. So what I want to do is I want to run the edge of my foot, the edge of the fabric. And when I run the edge of the fabric, let me see if I can, hold on a second. I'm not sure if I'm even on the fabric. Okay. If you can see, and I know it's not easy, and I might be getting too technical for you. My fabric is just inside of the edge of my foot. In other words, it's not hanging out of I can't see it outside of the edge of my foot. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. If you have your 1/4-inch foot with a guide and that works for you, that's fine. But don't use that piecing stitch because your needle won't be in the middle of the foot, and a 1/4-inch foot with a guide has a single hole. The needle has to be in the middle. So you have to decide J foot or 1/4-inch foot with a guide because you can't have both things. Okay, so I got to turn this a little bit because I'm going to just show you how to chain piece. Okay, and hopefully let me back up a little bit more. Oh, sorry. Let me get about there. Okay. Let me see if I can get that light. And kind of keep the light out of your way. It's just the shadow of the machine comes down. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, I've got my pivot on, so that means that when I stitch, and if I'm trying to keep my head out of your way, I think I'm good. When I stitch, I can't tell if I'm at the beginning of that stitch or not. When I take my foot off the pedal, you see how my needle went down, my foot came up. So if I need to adjust, I can go ahead and adjust. So if you have that pivot feature on your machine, you should be using it. And all I have to do is step on my foot pedal, and the foot will come down automatically. Now, when I get near, and normally, no, I don't let go of my stitch. I mean my fabric. When I get near the end, I'm not gonna cut. I'm gonna leave that on. Can you see? You see the other one's there. Here's my next one. My pin is on the side I'm gonna sew. I want to make sure everything's lined up. And I'm going to check both sides. I'm going to lay this down and get it lined up. I don't want to put it over the other fabric. And I normally sew it just about that speed. I'm not in a big rush. And I'm going to get near the end of that one. I'm going to pick up my next one. So I haven't cut my thread. And you could if you wanted to. So again, you notice my pin was over here. Now I just want to scoot my fabric so they line up with each other. Almost dropped it. Okay. Now lay it down and line it up. I'm trying to keep my hands out of your way. And don't forget, I'm aiming for this little, so I'm going from this point to this point. But I want to be just inside, which means just this way a tap. Okay, pins out because I know which way I'm putting this in. Oh, pin cushion's falling. Hold on. There we go. Okay, everybody's lined up. I'm going to get it lined up with my foot. If you're using the 1/4-inch foot with the guide, just get it lined up with the guide. Okay. Then I'm going to finish. So see, I have one long line oops, sorry. You'll have to excuse that. The pole is for the light, and when I go back in again, the pole won't be there. So here's my 4 pieces. And if you practice at that, first of all, it makes you a lot faster without having to sew faster. It makes you more efficient, I guess. But you don't have to do that if you don't want to. So I'm just going to snip apart the threads. Let me back the machine up for a minute. Okay, so let me go back this way. Let me push this back further. There we go. Okay, so I've got my, hope I haven't lost all my pieces. So I've got my 4 pieces here that I just stitched. So I'm going to, I want to press these in one direction. So can I come in just a little bit more? Okay. So I want to press these in one direction. And I'm going to, let's see. I'm gonna say this is my dark side. So I'm gonna press them to the dark side, which means if I lay this down this way. Let me see if I can get, okay. Whichever fabric is on top is which way the seam's going to go. So if this is the fabric on top, when I push this fabric open, and you see there's the seam. See the seam right there? So it's automatically going to the direction I want it to go. And when I do that, let me back up again. Oops, sorry. When I do that, and I just push that way, I won't get a crease in that where the seam is, where the seam is. So my seam allowance is over on this side. And I'm just going to take my wooden iron, or I'm going to take my roller, which I wish one of you girls would give it back to me. I know you took it last time. And I'm just pressing the seam. I don't need to be out here, pressing out here, pressing out here. I just need to get that seam fairly flat. So I'm going to do another one. And again, I'm going to flip it over. The fabric on top is where the seam allowance is going to be behind. And I want them all the same. So I'm going to open it. And maybe you can see it better that way. So see, when I fold over, there's your seam allowance right there. See it right there? So if I just finger press it, I don't have any fingernails, so if you get fingernails, go for it, I say. But I'm just pressing the seam. That's all I'm pressing, okay? Now remember we talked about the bias. So see, the bias is in here, and now it's controlled because the stitches are holding it. So this out here, these sections out here, the raw edges won't stretch as much. Now, if I took this to the iron and did a lot of pressing, I'm gonna knock it all out of whack. So I don't press it with the iron usually until I have the block together. So again, we got two more. So the fabric where the seam is going to go behind is on top. So I just had to turn around and put my iron on. It does that automatic shut off. So in case you're feeling the need that you have to press, what I do with my little tiny pressing mat? Oh, for crying out loud. Oh, right next to me. Okay, can I back up a little more? Okay. And if I, here, let's do this first. If I go up higher again, well, we can go up higher. I'm going to bring the camera back up higher because you don't need to be in that close to the. Hold on. I'll have that pole out of your way in a second. There. Oh. Oh, hold on. Okay. Why is my oh sorry about that. I was looking at the wrong picture. Instead of looking at my camera picture, I was looking at the YouTube picture. That's a little How are we there? Good? Okay. So if you really wanted to press this against my better judgment, so again, you're putting down the fabric that's going on top is the one where the seam allowance is going to go behind it. And you can see it pretty good now, see? See the seam allowance right there? Okay, so if you really feel the need to use your iron, you're just going to use it just enough to push that seam open. Okay, and then you can just do that. Okay, so if you want to, once you've got this pressed open, just press down. So you're just pressing, you're not ironing. Okay, pressing, ironing. Okay, so if you want to try that way. Okay, so now I'll use this little, we'll go this way, it doesn't matter this way. So now I'm going to line up my fabrics again. So I'm going to look at my picture. So remember the background fabric was to the outside corners, if you want to do it that way. And then we know we have 4 of these, so they got to go on the 4 sides. And now I have to pay attention to the writing, at least have it all one way now. Now, if I look at my writing, this one's upside down. If it was bothering me, I wanted to put it right side up. I can go put it there. It's right side up. And now, you see, I'm not gonna win no matter which way I do it. So I'd rather have them. I think they're all going to be the same. I'd rather have them all different than one guy not right. And these guys, it's fine because it's a square, so I can get them going the right way. Okay, so now we're going to chain piece this together. Does anybody have any questions? We good so far? Okay, so I generally would work from either my little cutting mat or from something and keep them right on this. Okay, so I'm going to come a little closer with this if I can. I'll bring that light closer. But you already saw how I lined up. So now we're going to chain piece, and we're going to chain piece this so we don't get confused. So we're going to look at this as if we're reading a book. And instead of doing the rows, which you can do if you want to, it's okay. We're going to do it as if it was a book. So that means I'm going to turn the page. So I'm going to take, this is column 1, this is column 2. So I'm going to take column 2 and I'm going to flip it over column 1, as if I was turning the page in the book. Okay? And if I wasn't sitting right next to my machine, I would put a pin in each one on the side I'm going to sew. But since I'm right here, I'm just going to pick this up. Just make sure it's lined up. Okay? And I can feel my seam is going down, so I don't have to worry about that flipping up. But I'm going to take it right over. And I'm going to sew with my, I have to stand up because I'm down pretty low, I can't see. So see if I can get out of your way here. If you want to stop at this point, this square should be the same size as this square. So it wouldn't hurt you if you're not certain of how your sewing is. It wouldn't hurt you to make sure that this is the same size as this. Okay, I'm not going to take the time now because we'd be in class till 10. But for your own reference, when you put 2 half squares together and they're supposed to match a square, they should be the same size. Okay, if you have to trim them, make sure you trim it equally so this line is still down the middle. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take, this is row 1. Column 1 is on the bottom, column 2 is on the top. You can't reach my pedal, hold on. And I'm going to stitch down to almost I'm at the edge, and I'm going to stop. I'm going to pick up my next one. And again, if I need to, put that pin in. But since I'm right here, hopefully I can't get into too much trouble. And I'm going to put this one in, and I'm almost going to butt it up against the other. The only reason I say almost is because I don't want you to overlap each other, overlap the first guy. And I can tell you I'm going to be off because I can see that I'm not over it, but that's okay because this is our practice, remember? Again, I picked it up. Right here is where my pin would be if I need it. Don't be too proud and not need it now. And I'm going to just bring it in with the other one left off. I feel like I'm stitching sideways. Okay, so I didn't cut in between. Now I can lay this back down. Okay, because look, I can't mess it up now. So I'm going to lay these back down. Now see that flipped over, but I obviously know because the seam wouldn't be up here, it'd be along here. Okay, and now I can open these up. Now I'm going to open it so that my seam allowance is going this way. Because I don't want my seam allowance doesn't need to go into a seam that's going into this nice plain section. And we talked about that last time. This one, it's two squares that are plain. I'm just going to lift this so that I'm pushing my seam allowance the opposite way. And I'm just going to finger press it. Or you could use your wooden iron. And then my last one, the seam is going to go back that way. Yeah. Right. So I just have to push the top fabric over because the seam's going to go the same as the top fabric. Okay? And what that's going to do when I get ready to sew the rows together, this seam is over here, this seam is over on this side, and this seam is on this side, so that they can nestle together. And I really showed that in detail last week. Excuse me, if you need to go back to that video. Okay? But now I'm back in order. Everything's supposed to be. Everything looks like it's supposed to be. Check your picture. And I'll give you a second. Now, does anyone have any questions before we go turn in another page? We good? Okay. So now we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to turn the page now for column 3. So we're just going to flip it up and onto column 2. Column 2, column 2. Okay, so 3, we're turning the page just like a book. Now this time we have to pin it because we can no longer pick this up. It's all one piece now. It's all hooked together. It's like a little spider web. Okay, so I'm going to just hold this up, line everybody up, and put my pin in on the side where I'm going to sew. I'm going to go to the next one, and I'm going to line this one up. And this is probably why I prefer to have my little cutting mat, because I'm going into my ironing mat where I wouldn't go into I'm pinning myself to my ironing mat. If I had my cutting mat, that wouldn't happen. And again, I want to make sure that I look. So I might think that I'm lined up here, but this top block could be past the bottom block. So I pull it, I move it a little bit so I can see that, and then I bring it back. Okay? And then I will pin that one. Okay? So here's how we should be looking. All right? Column 1, column 2 is underneath. We just turn the page and put column 3 on top of column 1. Now, when I pick this up, it's all together. So now I can't get things, I can't put column 1, column 3, number 1 onto 2 by mistake. Everybody's hooked together. And while it's dangling and it looks like a wind chime, it'll be okay. Okay, so let's get this sewn together the same way we did before. Hitting buttons on my machine when I'm trying to sew. So I'm just going to lay down. I don't care what column 2 and 3 are doing. I mean, rows 2 and 3 are doing. I'm just concerned for the moment on 1. But if you want to get the row 2 and row 3 kind of in order so it's not all bunched up, that's fine. So I'm going to start my sewing, and then I'll go ahead and take my pin out. And I want to make sure that this block is lined up all the way across here with the block underneath it. Oh, is my hand kind of, let's see if I can sew one hand. I know it's the wrong hand. Okay, so you see how row 2 is already, it's already like a little soldier. It's already in place to continue on. I don't want a big gap there because I don't want to sew a lot with no fabric. Sewing machines don't, that's not their favorite thing to do. But I don't want to jam it. I don't want to jam it into the block before it, or the section before it. And see, here's number 3 already lined up. Take my pin out. The reason I leave my pin in longer is because I've got the weight of all this fabric now, all these pieces. So it can get away from you, where at the beginning when I just had 2 fabrics together, I could take the pin out and just pinch them together. Now I also want to be careful because this seam, the seam that's coming this way, can get flipped. So I just want to make sure that I just take my time. If you don't have pivot, lift your foot up and put it down again as you're getting close to that seam so you don't flip that seam over. Okay? So now, if we open this up, and I haven't pressed anything one way or another yet, but now I opened it up and everybody should be in their own little spot. Did everybody do okay with that? Okay, so now I'm going to think about my seam. So again, I have this seam coming across. I don't need this seam allowance bumping into this, so I'm going to have this seam allowance is going towards the plain block. So I'm just going to lift it up and push my hand underneath to make sure that seam allowance is going where I want it to. And just give it a little finger press. The same here. I had this seam, so let's see if I can do this so that it makes sense to you. So in the first row, the seam is coming in to the center block. So this row, the seam would go out away from the center block. So I need this seam allowance is facing this way. This seam allowance is facing that way. So it's opposite of this one. And then again, coming down to this one, I want it, this seam allowance is out, out, This one is going to be in and in. Okay? So if I really want to, while I've got this sitting just like I want it to be, and I want to make sure that I don't have any creases in these seam allowance, in these right where the seam is. Okay? If I really think I have to, and again, I want to make sure I can feel the seam allowances are going in the direction I want. Top one seams towards here. Middle one seams towards here. Bottom one seams towards the center. And then I could just press. See? Press. Not iron, just press. And yes, I do steam. Okay? Now, when I press, I don't want to pick it up, not because it's hot, though it is. It's more because I don't want to pick it up and mess it around. So whenever I press, I just leave it alone for it to cool for a minute. So it looks pretty good, doesn't it? It's too bad you can't hold yours up. We'll have to figure that out sometime. When you ladies finish your block, you can go ahead and post it on my Facebook page, Miss Loreens Schoolhouse, and just post it to, I think I did a link today for today's class. You can post it right there in the comments. I gotta sneeze, hold on. I sneezed into my elbow. Okay, so now we just have to finish up. So we just need to connect row 1 to row 2 to row 3. So because this is all hooked together, we should just have to flip it over. Okay, so let me face it towards you. Okay, so we just have to flip it over. And we're going to use 2 pins. One at this seam and one at this seam. And remember, this guy's coming along for the ride, but he can just dangle away there. But you're not going to get it mixed up at this point. So I'm just going to pick it up, and I'm just going to make sure that the seam allowance, so the seam allowance, one's going one way, one's going the other. And I can feel the whole way down that it's nice and flat. And I'm going to put the pin in, and I'm going to put the pin in after the seam allowance, only because I want that pin to stay in as long as it can with me stitching up to the seam allowance. And I'm going to pick this one up, and I'm going to do the same thing. And I want to make sure that I've lined it up across the top, front and back. And I've got that seam allowance is nice and flat the whole way down. Okay? So I want to make sure that these raw edges at the top are together. Okay? Now, this seam allowance is facing this way, so that's fine. The machine will go right along. This one is facing this way, which is towards me or towards you, and that's okay. But this other guy is upside down. So you just want to be careful when you get near there that this doesn't flip back on you. Okay? This one is facing towards the machine or towards the foot. So it could flip up, but you can see that one. And this back one is flat, heading this way towards us or towards me, and the feed dogs won't flip. Wait a minute. Yeah, the back. I think I got this backwards. Wait a minute. So we're stitching along. Yes, the feed dogs are going to flip that back, and we're stitching along, and the feed dogs are going to let this one lay flat. Had myself confused there for a minute. So even though I have it pinned here, let me check. Even though I have this pinned here, I still want to make sure that I start out with the two the two blocks even with each other at this edge, okay? I'm just going to take my time. And remember, I want to leave this pin in as long as I can, but I got to remember, I want to make sure that the seam allowance underneath stays facing backwards. So I'm just taking a peek at it. Looks fine. Okay, so I'm up almost on the seam allowance with my needle. Now I can take my pin out. And yes, I put my pins away as I go. Okay, my next one, my seam allowance on the bottom is facing this way, which is fine. It's the one on top, which is facing towards the foot that could flip up. So if you have your pivot, you're going to stop and let the foot come up, and then go and stop, let the foot come up. If you don't have pivot, just put your lift your foot up a tad. It's just so that the fabric lays flat. So once I get to that seam allowance, I can take my pin out. Now what I have to concern myself with is the ends. I want the bottom and top squares to match up. And they should. So I'm going to hang on to them with my finger as long as I can, but I'm going to hang on. I'm going to still hang on over here to the left of my foot. Okay? So how'd we do? Look okay? So we want to be lined up as best we can there. And I'm just going to let this seam allowance here come down because there's less seam allowances down here for this long seam allowance to do than there is with this one. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. Sometimes your fabric will tell you what it wants to do. This one almost feels like it wants to go the other way. But I'm just going to press it that way for the moment because once I get to the iron, I can take care of some of that. So did you get your 2 rows together? So now we just have this bottom row. And you can either flip this way or you can flip this way. So let's go ahead and flip the small piece on top of the bigger piece. Did you see, because it's attached to each other, how it pretty well stays in order? And again, we're going to make sure that our seams are going opposite each other. And we're lined up at the top. And we're going to put our pin in just after the seam. You see where I am? So I'm practicing, the seam allowance is right there. I'm going to do this one the same thing, and I want to feel all the way down to make sure that that is nice and straight. And pin. Okay? So I just want to take a look. Okay, I know there's no seam here, and this seam is going to go this way. This seam is heading this way. So this is the one I have to pay attention to because it's going, so the feed dogs are going to want to flip it towards us. This is the one I got to keep an eye on here because it's heading towards the foot so the foot can flip it back, but I can see that one. And my bottom one is fine because it's heading in the right direction. And this little guy at the end I got to keep an eye on, again, because my foot on top could flip that over, okay? And if you want to pin your ends right away, you can do that. Just pin in a little ways. And if you're going to pin the beginning one, don't pin at the very end because you want to leave your pin in when you first put your needle down into the fabric. So I'm going to leave mine sitting like that so you can see it. And you go ahead and get yourself pinned. Okay, is everybody pinned? Everybody doing okay? Did any of you quit on me, quit sewing? Jen, I haven't heard from you in a while. I'm just checking in, make sure you didn't leave. You're awful quiet. Okay, so once we get this row done, our block is finished. Isn't that exciting? And you used your cutter. That's pretty exciting too. So I'm going to go ahead and get my block piece to where I need it. Okay, I want to take one stitch at least before I take this first pin out. Okay. You think of your needle, when your needle is down, it's like having a third hand to help you out. Oop, a little too fast. Okay, I'm going to take my time stitching. My foot lifts up so I can make sure that my seam underneath is still going the way it's supposed to. And if it's not, just take a pin and slide it underneath and just get it back, or a stiletto and get it where it belongs. Just make sure when you do things like that, you take your foot off the foot pedal so you don't start sewing yourself into your block. So I stopped to make sure that this seam, because this seam is facing in and it'll want to flip back this way. I just want to make sure it doesn't do that. If it does, it's not the end of the world. Remember, this isn't your prom dress. Oh, Rhonda, you're still there too. I knew you'd stay. It's Jen that tries to sneak off. Okay, so looky there. We got a block. And I'm going to see how this seam wants to go. Let's see if I can get them. So if I show it this way, so here's our two seams. So do you see, if they're going in, they're not running into the bulk of these edges as well. Does that make sense to you? Christine, I knew you were still there. I just heard from you a little bit ago. I knew you wouldn't leave me. Okay, so the first thing I want to do now is press. But I want to make sure before I press that I use my wooden iron and just give that seam a little press so you don't get the, that little crease there. So let me back this up a little bit. And see, no matter which way I turn it, it's the same block. There's my two seams this way. So I can tell by my writing. See, if I put this block into something, these four whole blocks, the writing is right side up this way. So, and again, depends what you put it in, whether it matters or not. So did everybody get their block done? Oh, Lynn, well, I knew you. Okay, it's just Jen that would sneak off. And I can hear her saying something now. Just pulling your leg, Jen. But you see how by having each seam allowance go in the opposite direction, see how those line up much better? Okay? Now this guy looks a little puffy because that seam allowance is puffing it up. So we'll just give him a little steam. And yes, I did iron across, in case you're going to say something to me, because I'm just ironing across right here where the two seams are. Okay, so the only thing I would do after this is just make sure that I square it up to, what is it, 6.5. If it's a 6-inch block, it's 6-inch finish, so it would measure 6.5. But we're looking pretty straight, pretty good. So let me get the other one. With this one I used Christmas fabric. I forgot I used Christmas fabric. So there's the 2 blocks we've done for our practice. So let me know in the chat if you want to practice doing another block before we start on something real. Because let's see. In our picture, well, there's our star block. Oh, look, I got mine all done. I didn't even think of that. Okay, so if you look here, you can see that these are, let me do it this way. So these are 9 patches, which means 3 across, 3 down, 9. 3 across, 3 up and down, 9. When you look at some of these, for example, let's look at this one. This is probably easier to show. The basket is 1, 2, 3, 4 across, 4 down. So would you like to do a little bit more complex practice block before we start? Or are you ready to start? Let me hear in the chat what you think you'd like to do. Oh, Glenn, you got your block finished, so I expect it'll be up on Facebook tomorrow. Come on, you can do it. So, Lynn, tell me what you think. Would you like to do a little bit harder block before we start? So, how hard do we want it to be? Because some of these blocks are the ones we're doing. So, we doing roll of the dice? Yes. Can't do that one. Oh, that one's, I'm not sure you want to do that one yet. Let's see. Let's see what practice one we'd like to do. We could do this one. So I'm going to wait a minute to see. Let's see, what do we got? We've got, where are we? Jen, what, more practice? Christine's ready to start. Lynn's, I'll try. That's kind of in the middle. Oh, don't. Oh, no, I lost my head. That's pretty funny, Christine. Lost my marbles, haven't I? Well, let's see. We could do the flower. So Christine, for you, you just have to pick a block that's just not a 9 patch in your cube. And if you have trouble with that, let me know. Let's see. So let's see. Oh, more complex. I'm sorry, Jennifer. I just read more. So more complex. Well, why don't we just get started? My choice is for one more practice. Oh, your fabric's on order. That's pretty funny. Okay. Let's practice next time with the tulip, because that has a little, let's see if you can see. It has a little 4 patch that you have to put all together before you do the other pieces. Oh, you know what? Let's do this one. And I'll tell you why. Because it looks like there's 4 rows, but there's only 3. So we'll work on that, how that middle section works. So we'll do the sawtooth, 6 inch. Yeah, you can do whatever size you have. So Christine, I think you have an 8-inch cube. So you'll be just making an 8-inch one or something similar to this, what this looks like. So I'm going to put that up there for you, Christine. If you need to take a picture of that, this one right here, so you can find something similar in your cube. I'll hold it for the count of, I don't know, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Okay, so you just want to find, you may have the exact same one, I don't know. I'm not sure. Okay, so are there any other questions? So Lynn got her block done. I think Christine said she got her block done. Oh, good, you got it, Christine, that's good. Okay. So one more practice, a little bit more complicated block. When we start for real, we'll start with this one that we already did. So you should know how to do that, so you won't be stressed. So what we'll try to do is maybe one time it might be a little harder, and then next time a little easier. I'll try to do that as best I can. Now, as these blocks get more complicated, and it takes us longer to cut them, we may not finish stitching the whole block in the time that we have. But we'll try to get it as best we can, because I won't have to explain to you every time about I'll tell you which way to press, but we won't talk about, butting the seams and blah, 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 and all that. So it'll move along a little faster, but we won't go too fast, because I know you guys, for the most part, nobody wants to be rushed. Okay? So if you're just starting this week, go back to last Thursday's Gemini, and I'm going to put them on my YouTube channel. If you subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you get the reminders, I will make a playlist that'll be Gemini, so that you'll at any time be able to go back and see any of the ones specific to this project. So that'll make it a little easy for you. So if you want to practice in between with your cutting, or you just want to watch it because you missed a couple parts because you were, busy sewing or whatever, sewing along. Because sometimes when you're sewing along, you don't necessarily hear everything. Or if you didn't sew on, you might have to just pause it and sew part and pause it. Or again, like I said, if you're good at your sewing already, once you get your cutting done, you just, go forward, or you don't need to watch the rest. I suggest you watch the rest only because there might be some tips in there that are different from what you know. And, there's not always just one way to do something. Okay, so I'm going to say goodnight, and I'm going to leave the video going for a minute, because I don't want it to cut off the end, because there's a delay there and it always concerns me. And don't forget, I'll get rid of that whole beginning over the next couple of days. So when you go back to watch it later, you won't have to go through that what were we, like 6:45 or 20 minutes to 7, whatever it was. I'll get rid of the whole portion before the 7 o'clock time that we started. So thanks for joining me. Make sure you subscribe and like and all that. I don't want to get any thumbs down now, because then I'll cry. Not really, but that's okay. And again, have fun working with these. Have fun using your cutters. And let me make sure that there aren't any more questions. And we're good to go. So everyone have a nice evening if you're up here in New England with us. I hope the muggy weather goes away so that we can get the windows back open again. And thank you. And we'll see you next Thursday, or if you're joining in Saturday for the pot holder. Bye.